Hey, what's going on, everyone? I took last week off. It's time for the first video of 2023, so what better video to make than Vinyl Tag 2023? And there are at least 20 different records that I have to talk about in this video, so I'm not going to waste any time. Let's just get straight into it. Let's go. So if you don't know, Vinyl Tag is this thing that happens in the vinyl community every year, and someone, I'm unsure of who, makes 20 prompts, and you're supposed to use those prompts to show records from your personal collection. So me and my cat, who may or may not come into frame, who just walked in the room, are going to show you all these records. I'm sitting on the floor of my listening room because there's still construction happening all around my store, and I normally will record these videos before the store opens, and I can't do that because there's a ton of banging and noise and stuff like that. So, sitting on the floor in the listening room, gonna show you some records, so let's get into it. I've already wasted too much time. So, number one, best find of 2022. This one's kind of a double-edged sword for me because, yes, it's a great find. It's the Royal Jesters. We go together on their own label, Jester Records. This is the first and only time I've ever seen this record in the flesh, in person, and I saw it. I asked the seller, does it skip? He said no, didn't question it, bought it right away, spent too much money on it. But it's a good, solid-ish, it's a good enough play copy for now, and eventually, hopefully, probably not, I'll find a cleaner one and can sell this one. So that's number one. Number two, an artist you recently discovered. This one's kind of a funny one. Shouts out to Sacred Bones for putting this compilation out. This is Yahuwah. And Yahuwah is this guy, I believe his name was Jim Baker, and Father Yod, as he's also known. And he started a cult in California called the Source Family. One of the first vegan restaurants in America was opened by this guy and ended up starting a cult. And then, tale as old as time, started a psych rock band, go figure, took on multiple wives. You know how these things go. There's a great documentary that Drag City Films released called The Source Family, that I think, for me, as far as like documentaries about cults go, which I do enjoy a good cult, I think it gives you a glimpse more into how these people could have ended up there. Like, they interview enough people that were in the cult that it's like, oh yeah, I can kind of see how you ended up in this position, which I think is very interesting. All right, number three, a perfect album, Black Sabbath Paranoid. I picked this album because Iron Man, War Pigs, the title track Paranoid, I mean, they're ones you hear on classic rock radio all the time, and for me, at a certain point, I got kind of burnt out on them. I found them kind of cheesy, just because I'd heard those three songs and then, a few more, obviously, over and over and over again. But the reason this is a perfect album is because even with all of that fatigue from hearing those songs on the radio so much, when you listen to this in its entirety, you go from War Pigs, Paranoid, then Planet Caravan, Iron Man, you get the singles out of the way, and then on the B-side, Electric Funeral, Fairies Wear Boots, it all fits together so perfectly. This is a reissue. It's not a great copy. Hopefully I can upgrade at some point, but it just fits together so perfectly and is so cohesive. I don't know. It just works in a way that a lot of records don't, especially when they get kind of overplayed. This one, if you sit and listen to it front to back, never gets old. All right, number four, a song that made you cry or get close. I've got two for this one. I know it's kind of cheating, but there's two different types of crying. There's happy crying and sad crying. So, happy cry. Well, Hey Julie from Welcome Interstate Managers by Fountains of Wayne, one of the most underrated bands of the late 90s and 2000s. But it's really Hey Julie is really a song about the pains of capitalism and of working yourself to death at a job that you don't like, for people that you don't like, and how sometimes a partner that you can come home to for support is the only thing that'll get you through that. The lyric is, I'd never make it through without you around. And I feel that. as someone who loves their wife, I feel that very deeply. Shouts out Kylie. My dog's barking. Give me a second. All right, I'm back. Sad Cry. Flicker by Atmosphere from the album Southsiders. Flicker is Slug, the MC of Atmosphere, and the producer. It's about Slug grappling with the death of his friend Idea from Idea and the Abilities. It's a very sad song. Idea overdosed, I believe. His mother is the one that found him. It's all kind of documented in the song, but there's one lyric that ends the second verse that hits me particularly hard every time. And the lyric is, "And then I smoked 1 million cigarettes. Go figure, maybe I was trying to catch up with you. Flicker." And it's a great song. The raps are great, the flows are great, the lyrics are great, but it just, he has this, Slug has this way of like when he really has a subject matter that is deeply personal to him of painting this really vivid picture. You can go back and listen to The Waitress, from When Life Gives You Lemons, Paint That Shit Gold. That's another one that's really kind of pretty fucking sad. But those are Happy Cry, Sad Cry. Those ones get me every time. All right, terrible album cover. I'm going with the 5 Keys on Stage because it's one of my favorite recalled album cover stories. This is the original uncensored cover that got recalled, airbrushed, and reissued. And I'm just going to give you a second to look at this and see if you can figure out why it was recalled. If you have a guess, drop it in the comments and I will tell you if you're right or wrong. And then as far as bad album covers go, this one's so bad it's good. I just love it. As a fan of golf myself, look at how swagged out he is. The drip. It's a really goofy album cover, but it's fantastic. So, all right, an album that would surprise your friends. I'm picking this one, even though it was in my top 10 of 2022, because it did indeed surprise my wife when I put it on in the car, and that's Emily Nenny's On the Ranch. I do like country music, but I typically like sad bastard country music, like Townes Van Zandt, Blaze Foley, John Prine, Guy Clark, etc. And this one's a little more swinging. It's a little more upbeat. It's a little more fun. That crate almost flipped over there. And so, yeah, kind of caught my wife off guard a little bit when I put it on in the car. So that's why that one gets that place in the whatever. Number 7, Guilty Pleasure. I think this was on last year's Vinyl Tag, so I may have addressed it then. But if I didn't, I personally do not believe in guilty pleasures. It's not a phrase that I use. It's not a phrase that I particularly like. I think that whatever you like, it's because you like it and you shouldn't be ashamed of that. You can be the hardest of hardcore kids, the most metal of metalheads, the punkest of punks, and if you like Katy Perry, go ahead and like Katy Perry. If you like Kesha, go ahead and like Kesha. So I don't have really one for this because of that philosophy, but I'm a very non-religious person. Never been, never gonna be, but I do love Christian psych rock. You'll catch me singing along to, songs about Jesus, despite, how I may or may not feel about the church. But this compilation, Jesus People Music, is so good. All these songs are great. My favorite is this song by Maranatha, Deeper Than the Mighty Rolling Sea. It's an amazing song. I want that record so bad, but it's so expensive, $500 plus. Well, I've seen them as low as, I guess, maybe $350, but I think the one on Discogs right now is like $600 or $700. Out of my price range, but a really, really, really great comp. Who released this one? Org Music. Good label for reissue stuff. Let's see. Number 8, the album that took you the longest to find. I'm not really somebody that gets hung up on like searching for one specific thing. I don't really get like super single-minded and focused on records. I like finding new things. So I always like it when I'm going through the bins and I see a cover that looks crazy, or I see an artist that I'm not familiar with on a label that I love, or something like that. But this is a record that took 20 years to get pressed, and it is a soundtrack. it's no surprise to anybody. And also, like, yeah, okay, the white guy talking, or the white-ish guy, not actually white, but talking about fucking Wes Anderson or whatever. I get it. It's cliched, but I like his movies, and I think that his use of music in them is top tier. And the first of his soundtracks that I ever saw on vinyl, and I think maybe the first one that got pressed on vinyl, was Darjeeling Limited. Great film, kind of underrated in his filmography. But then after that, I think it was like 2014 or 15, Rushmore was finally pressed, which is my favorite Wes Anderson movie. But it got repressed with this god-awful DVD box artwork that instead of a rectangle got stretched out to a square, and it's all like pixelated and out of proportions, and it's just absolute dog shit. And whoever approved that should be ashamed of themselves. But then we got Isle of Dogs when it came out. We got French Dispatch when it came out. Never got Grand Budapest. And so then slowly the reissues started trickling in. We got Life Aquatic. And then finally, the one I've been asking for since I started collecting soundtracks is the Royal Tenenbaums. It is so good. Right off the bat, the first non-Mark Mothersbaugh song that comes in is Nico These Days. Fantastic song. And then you get Bob Dylan, you get Emmett Rhodes, you get The Clash, Judy as a Punk, The Ramones, Elliott Smith, Nick Drake, Velvet Underground, Nico again. I mean, Jesus, the album is so good. The movie's so good. This was the first movie that ever made me aware of Wes Anderson. I remember when it came out, my parents loving it and really wanting to see it. I own this tracksuit. I was Ben Stiller for Halloween one year. Great film, great soundtrack, and I was so happy that for Record Store Day, it finally got released, even though it was supposed to come out, Black Friday of 2021, and it got pushed back to 2022, I don't know, something like that, but still took longer than it was supposed to, but it took 20 years for someone to have the bright idea to issue that on vinyl, and they did, and I'm very happy about it. All right, so number 9, geez. I feel like we should be farther along than that. Number 9, your number 1 most wanted. Again, I don't get really fixated and focused on this kind of stuff. My number 1 most wanted is probably like the 45 of I Know You Will by Log, or any really boogie funk 45s, especially the smaller ones that are like way more heavy on the synths. But that's neither here nor there. I think really the number 1 most wanted, and it's the most wanted because it's an album that I love, and it's an album that I own, but I want a certain version of it that I'm likely never going to pay for because it's too expensive. But if one happens to fall in my lap one day, that would be amazing. But it is Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath. But the 1970 UK Vertigo pressing is the one that I want, and it's the one that I do not have. This one does have the song Evil Woman on it, which is why I want the UK version, because the US version does not have that song on it. But this is an Irish pressing from like the 70s on NEMS. I think the 70s. 82, not even the 70s. So long after the original issue. And look, we all know the Vertigo swirl just goes hard. It just does, right? It doesn't make, as Sabbath fans, it doesn't make sense why we get so fixated on the stupid swirl label. It's just a center label. It doesn't make the record sound different, any better or worse, nothing like that, but it looks sick and we all want it. And it's because we're sick people. That's all that it is. Okay, so second half of the list, here we go. Number 10, favorite new release of 2022. To go back to what I said about Boogie Funk, it's E Live. He's one of my favorite modern funk producers. Cloud Vibes, double LP, came out on Star Creature. Absolutely incredible. I put this on in the Wax Wednesday stream that we did yesterday, and immediately Weasel was a friend of ours that was there, was like, yo, what is this? This needs to be played like at a roller rink or something. And it's like, yeah, it does, because it's sick and it's groovy, and I just love everything E-Live does, all the remixes, this, Boogie for Life, the album before. Really, really, really good stuff. If you're not hip to Star Creature, get hip to it. All right, number 11, an album with an animal on the cover. This is Fourth, Audio Massage. This was released by a label that's owned by Memphis State University in like the 70s or something like that. This doesn't have a date on it, I don't think. But it's really good. It's a trio of jazz funk type of stuff. 1985. It's really, really good. It goes from very groovy to very experimental to kind of free jazzy, lots of improv. Fantastic. Let's see here. Number 12, an album with a story. Bada bing, bada boom. It is not an album, but it is a 12-inch single. Now, in 2015, I went to South by Southwest for the first and, at this point, last time. And I went with a buddy of mine. We had both just graduated from college in the winter of 2014. And so, we did it. We got the film badges. We got into all the stuff. Saw a ton of great films for the first time, their premieres, working cuts, things like that. It was an incredible experience. But I was walking around the convention and I saw this booth with someone who had a custom record cutter set up. And so I went to go talk to them, and they were a German company, and they had built this lathe cut, essentially, that you attached to a Technics 1200 or 1210, and you could cut your own records. And so I was talking to them about it. I was asking about it. And they weren't giving me the time of day. But then I told them I worked at a record store. And they were like, oh, well, I can cut you a sample. And it just so happened that I had some CD copies of my musical project at the time. It was a solo project at the time called Crystal Lake, emo, screamo type stuff. Whatever you're thinking screamo is, it's not what you're thinking, believe me. But I had these because I knew that I was going to see friends that were from out of state and stuff. And I was like, oh, I'll just give the rest of these CDs away. The band's not a thing anymore. It would become a thing later when other members joined and I had a full band. But anyway, so I had it and I was just going to give them all out. And so when they asked for a sample, I was like, oh, here, cut this. And I told them to cut the title track of the EP. And so I have this 12-inch single of a Crystal Lake song, which is my band. I wrote and recorded every aspect of the song that's on this disc, and it's the only music I've ever done that has been put to vinyl. It is a 1 of 1. It's very, very special to me. I don't listen to it. I don't ever listen to it, but it's still very cool to have, and I'm very thankful for that. And hopefully in the future, music that I release will get actually pressed on vinyl, and this will no longer be my only piece of original music on vinyl. So, an album from a faraway land. Here's a Mexican pressing of David Bowie, Young Americans. I have a Mexican pressing of Boots by Nancy Sinatra as well. I really like collecting Mexican pressings as a Mexican descendant myself. And yeah, it's just cool. The really probably farthest land is the Irish pressing of Black Sabbath, but I already showed that. So, all right, number 14, your latest Rabbithole. This record is not super representative of that. It is a little bit. But I recently, not to brag, but I got a subscription to the Criterion channel. I really love movies, if you didn't get that already. And I watched a few Francesco De Leo films in the Italian thriller collection on the Criterion channel and realized that they are amazing. They're really great action movies, super entertaining. I loved them. I watched The Italian Connection and The Boss. And part of why I love them is their soundtracks are so fucking good. And now I'm going down this rabbit hole of trying to find all these 1970s Italian film soundtracks because they're super flushed with drum breaks and horns and just funky bass lines. But what I have here is a Sandro Galileo record, and it is for a fake movie that is in the Italian mystery kind of style. And the music is, meant to sound like it would have come from a 1970s Italian film. And they do a really, really, really good job of replicating that sound, that feel, that tone. Song Cliff Diver is amazing. Smoke and Mirrors is my favorite cut from this track. I put this on during Wax Wednesday in a room full of music producers. And the first thing Scotty said was like, that's a sample. Like literally 2 seconds in. That's how funky it is. That's how good it is. But on Eraserhood Sound, the band that performs all the songs is Fantasy 15. I have a lot of their 45s and stuff. I really, really enjoy what Eraserhood Sound is doing right now. So check that out if you haven't already. Number 15, artwork doesn't match the music. This is a legendary record. Stark Reality discovers Hoagie Carmichael's music shop. Every hip-hop producer ever knows about this record because it's full of breaks and samples, but it's really psychedelic and funky, and Now Again, who reissued this, describes it as Hendrix Stone guitars, heavily fuzzed vibraphone, and bitches brew rhythms. This came out for Record Store Day Black Friday, and it was mastered by Bernie Grunman, and it sounds fantastic. It was my wife's idea to keep this. I wanted to, but I really try to control myself when it comes to keeping stuff for the shop, and she wanted it, so I was like, okay, you can have it, because I also want it. So I used that as an excuse. All right, 16, best bargain find. I don't really do a lot of bargain bin shopping because I'm just always in the store, but this is the Sal Soul Orchestra, Heated Up, and they're just the house band for the Sal Soul label. There are 3 labels that I know I can trust: Sal Soul, Solar, and Prelude, along with like West End and a few others. But those are the big 3 that whenever I see them, I got to pick them up. And this is a record, I looked it up on Discogs, and it is more than a bargain bin record. It's like $8 or something. But you can find a lot of these like Sal Soul Orchestra, like house band type of records in bargain bins, especially when you're at like a metal shop or like a place that specializes in not funk music. But it's so good. It is so good. Very funky, very groovy. I love to play it out. So don't sleep on those 3 labels. Some of their stuff can get really expensive and collectible, but some of it you can find on the cheap. So 17, an album that takes you back to a specific time. Descendants, Everything Sucks. 2009, senior year of high school. I was really into World of Warcraft for like 6 months. I played so much World of Warcraft, some of the best times of my life. I love that game. Just a simpler time. No bills, no responsibilities. Just come home from school, play WoW, listen to the Descendants, and, you know, probably No Effects and a bunch of other stuff. But for some reason, I just remember so vividly listening to Rotting Out, Sick of Me, Hateful Notebook, She Loves Me. Like, those songs, for some reason, remind me of World of Warcraft so much and that time in my life. So this is definitely one that takes me back. Wild Card, number 18. We're nearing the end, folks. We're almost there. Wild Card, this is Medium. It was released by the Kennesaw State University Zuckerman Museum of Art, and it is Paranormal Field Recordings and Compositions 1901 through 2017. It starts with a recording of an interview describing a paranormal encounter. The second track is a song that uses voice recordings of people that have since passed, manipulated through modular synthesis as this kind of like way of tapping into something larger than yourself, I suppose. But it's very, very interesting. It's really out there, but just such a unique concept, and not one that I really listen to all that much, just casually. And sometimes I've even found myself wondering, why do I have this? And then I DJ'd a Halloween show in 2021, and I opened with the interview of the recounting the paranormal experience, and it worked perfectly. It was great. And I was like, oh yeah, this is why I have this. This is why you keep stuff that is unique. Everybody's got the classics, but the stuff you find that you like that's unique to you, keep it, because you'll find a use for it someday. All right, number 19 is an album/artist that you can't get into. Super easy. Grateful Dead. What the fuck is going on with them? Don't get it. Every time Europe 72 or whatever that record is comes in the shop, I listen to it all the way through. I try to tap into it. I've got a lot of friends that are Deadheads that have sent me like, oh, you need to listen to this show, Wembley, whatever, and I just do not get it. It is very boring. And I don't think that there is an amount of drugs that could make me think it's not boring. I'm still trying, because I just know so many people that are so passionate about it. I'm still trying. Every 6 months or so, I'll give it another go, but it's been years at this point, and I still haven't figured it out. I don't think it's going to happen for me, but I'm not going to shut myself off to things. You never know. People change, things happen. All right, number 20, vinyl aspiration for 2023. It's right behind me. Get organized. What you can't see is the 100 records that are on the floor. What you can't see is the 200 records that are at the shop in no discernible order. What you can't see is like the 45s. My 45s are in no discernible organization system whatsoever. And it does make it kind of difficult whenever I'm putting together a set for a gig, because I have to look through everything. I don't know where to find. I mean, this stuff, I'll give myself some credit. This stuff is organized. We got psych, we got heavy stuff, and then we got soul, all the way to here, hip hop, rock, experimental, electronic soundtracks, jazz, Latin, country. So that is in it. It's not alphabetized, it's just genre, but that's in a discernible order. Outside of what's on this shelf, which is probably 50% of my collection, maybe 60. Outside of this, nothing. I have such a hard time putting stuff back after I do a gig. And I just really need to get it together. And I need to listen to everything that I have too. Like there's all the whole bottom row is 12-inch singles. And there's some that when I look at it, I'm like, I don't really remember what that song sounds like. So I need to just listen to what I have instead of thinking about getting new stuff, and get organized so that when it's time for me to play a set, easy peasy, we can make it happen, no problem. But yeah, that's Vinyl Tag 2023. I hope some of this you found moderately interesting at least, and I appreciate you for watching. It's a new year, so let me know what topics you want to see covered on the channel. I know there's probably not really any topics left to discuss at this point in the vinyl community, but I do think that as a younger record store owner who I don't think is particularly snobby, that's just me, I have a unique perspective on some of this stuff, and so I would love to be able to share that insight or answer any questions that you may have so that your vinyl journey can be as fun and enjoyable and stress-free as possible. So that's it. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Go to our website, hybridrecordstx.com, where you can shop and sign up for the newsletter. And then, yeah, more stuff coming here on YouTube. Might even get to where we're uploading twice a week. We'll see. But yeah, 2023, going to be a good year. So let's do it. Let's all buy more records. See you later.